Welcome back to Moonbath Chats. We're going to talk about Agatha All Along, the series, and also the finale, I guess. How do I feel about it? You ask. Well, I really enjoyed and liked this show. Aside from some of its Marvelisms, I think this was an extraordinary show. A great example of what Marvel can be. If you're into witchy things, it's a no-brainer. If you want something fun that has a good mix of like serious somber moments, but also with like more campy elements as well, for the most part it balances those two extremes pretty well. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and the acting is just phenomenal. Catherine Hahn, of course, is great, born for this role type of situation. Joe Locke as the teen is fun. All of them, like Sashir Samada, Ali An, the whole coven. We got the legendary Patti LuPone in there, and of course Aubrey Plaza, and the chemistry between her and Catherine is really good. Definitely in the top 3 of the Marvel TV shows. As for the finale, I think it was satisfying. The finale, there's some Marvelisms in the ending of episode 8. They were trying to connect it too much to what they maybe could do in the future, that this show kind of lost a little bit of its compactness, its conciseness, and I think that was a little bit detrimental to the storytelling. But it's something that I was easily able to kind of sweep away under the rug a little bit because of the strong cast, because of the storytelling in general, and the writing for these characters, the development, and just the fun nature of it all. Like I've just had a lot of fun with these characters that I can kind of push aside a little bit of my quibbles here and there. The episode 9 flashback in particular, I think, was some of the best of what we've seen in the MCU. I do wish it was explored a little more of those flashbacks. We'll get into the breakdown, what I, maybe later on, what I would like to see more of. But in general, it was a good time. So let's get into spoilers now. We're gonna get into the breakdown. Episode 8 of Agatha All Along. It's the penultimate episode. Here we go. And so we go back to Alice right after she died. And I like this little camera movement here, because it really like kind of puts it into perspective, like literally in the upside down world, because death is here. She realizes that she's dead. I'm really digging these looks for death for Aubrey's character. We got the darker lipstick here, a little bit more ghoulish looking. It would seem that like how death appears is kind of related to the person who sees her, right? She maybe adjusts her look depending on who she's ushering away into the afterlife. This is what happened at the end of that episode where Rio was suddenly missing, as we all were speculating. Yeah, she's dead. She's taking care of Alice. That's what she was up to. And of course, Alice is like, I wasn't ready. What's going on? I got my power back. I got the curse lifted. I was ready to start a whole new life. It was going to be amazing. And why now? And Rio/Death is like, well, end of the day, you were a protection witch, right? And you protected a witch at the end of your life. It brought her a little bit more towards acceptance, I guess, hearing that from Death/Rio, that she actually was able to protect somebody at least with her magic. It would be nice to see where this takes Alice. My understanding is that in this universe, the MC universe, the afterlife is kind of dependent on your belief system. I guess like the Asgardians go to Valhalla or whatever, then someone like Moon Knight, who's like an Egyptian character, there's like the Egyptian afterlife with those Egyptian gods. And so it all depends. I do wonder what happens if you're an atheist. Like, what is there an atheist heaven somewhere? Maybe it's like it's just how you picture it. Like, I'm an atheist, but like if I were to discover there's an afterlife or envision one, I would want it to be maybe like a fairy tale forest or something. That would be nice. But that was cool. I like that this gave Alice's character a little bit more closure, because it felt like her death was a bit swept under the rug. Like, it felt like everyone just abandoned her real easily. But of course, that was the moment where Wiccan revealed himself, so they didn't have much time to go and take care of Alice. We actually get the opening title of the episode, "Follow Me, My Friend, to Glory," at the end. Then we go back to connecting the moment back to the previous episode where Lilia sacrificed herself. She did take out the Salem Seven, all of them, because people were speculating that we only saw 5 of them get impaled. I assumed it was all of them, even though we didn't see all 7 get impaled. Thematically, it just made sense that the whole Salem 7 died at that moment. It would make sense for Lilia's character to do that. So I didn't really think that 2 of them were gonna come back. The ones that could fly, whatever, the ones that could turn to birds. Maybe later on in some other series they'll show up again. But it's pretty definitive that, like, as we see in these episodes, they don't show up at all ever again, right? In this series. Here. Oh, by the way, I did want to mention, I guess, before we get too deep, we do have to talk about the aspect ratio. Now, the aspect ratio is the same widescreen aspect ratio we've seen in Agatha's first couple episodes, Agatha's trial, the moment where Lilia goes back into time. It's the same, widescreen aspect ratio that we see on the road throughout these next episodes, even during the flashbacks and all that. My conclusion is really what I said last time. It seems that this is just the aspect ratio is just an aesthetic choice that the director, the showrunners are implementing to differentiate different scenarios. Often the trials are, taller aspect ratios to just give you a wider view, make it seem like, you're in a different space. Billy got his own squished taller ratio that is even like further removed from the Witch's Road, so maybe that's why it was so different from the other ones. They want the cinematic wide aspect ratio to connect through Agatha's storyline, like her through line from beginning to end, to just unite her story arc, and also just to make, I guess, the ending and the beginning a little bit more cinematic. It's not necessarily more specific than that or any deeper than that, I think. I was kind of hoping there was a little bit more to it, because there were so many different aspect ratios. It seemed like there was something specific to it, something that Jack Schaefer wanted to say besides just give an aesthetic look. I don't know. It works out. It's fine. Anyways, so we switch to Agatha, and she's run into Rio once more. Now, this is the moment where Rio reveals that, her true goal here is to get Billy, because Billy she sees as an abomination, in that he was able to cheat death by taking the body of another. So she says that, like, she gave her special treatment, which at this point it's not quite revealed, of course, what exactly that treatment is. There's still a little bit of mystery here of what she means, but of course it's referencing how she let Agatha's son live for a certain time, giving her a bit of time to spend with her son before she took her son, because her son was meant to die at childbirth. She doesn't see it as that much of a bad thing to give people time with somebody and then snatch it away. But Agatha definitely sees that as a cruel thing. Of course, that's what Agatha did plead in the woods. We'll get to that scene. She did want more time. And it's not like Death had malicious intent. She actually thought of it as, as something nice to do for the person she loved, because at that point, I assume at that point they were broken up already, but we'll get more into that in a bit. So I guess they're discussing Rio as the Green Witch. The clues were there all along that she was the Green Witch, and she clarifies that death is part of this great cycle of things, of life, growth, and decay. And so it makes sense why she's the Green Witch. They're also saying how it makes sense that she's Agatha's ex. Of course, the witch that, is pretty much a serial killer is going to have a relationship with death. That's one of the things I do wish we saw more of. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see too much of Agatha and Rio's budding relationship in the early years. So now Agatha and Rio are kind of trying to negotiate what to do here. If Rio really wants the teen, she should just take him, right? She can't really take him because as soon as Billy dies in that body, he's going to resurrect himself into another body, it would seem. She needs Billy to voluntarily give himself up to her because it seems that Billy has this special power, to be able to transport to different bodies, which Tommy does not have, which we'll find out later. So Rio's thinking like, oh, he's going to be able to give Tommy a body, and that's going to be too much. That's going to be out of bounds of the natural sacred balance of things. And so she needs to put a stop to that. So Agatha offers up a trade. It's like, fine, I'll help you. I'll have him offer himself up to you. In exchange, you'll stop pursuing me. And I'll never see you ever again. And the moment that I see you, when I do eventually die a long time from now, I don't want to see your face. Rio doesn't really show it too much in her face, but I get a sense here that that's pretty hurtful, Again, this is two ex-lovers in a timeless cosmic affair. They've been broken up for a while, but it seems that, Rio and even Agatha still has some of that lingering affection for each other, right? But Agatha wants to make it clear that regardless of any feelings she may still hold, she despises Rio for what she did. Rio asks, like, why does Agatha let people think that she traded her son for the Darkhold? And Agatha's like, well, I only did that because the truth is worse. Doing this deal with death to like, oh, give me some more time, that she had some responsibility in it too, because she asked for it, and then she in a way exploited her son for personal gain to make herself powerful, to kill all these witches. She used her son for that, and her son at the end really didn't really want to do it anymore. And so in that way, that's a worse, more devious thing to do than simply just trade your son for a book. Rio agrees, like, okay, give me Billy and I'll stop being in your life. You'll never see me again. It can't be any clearer than that when you want to break up with somebody. Like, Rio's a big girl, as Agatha says, she accepts it, so be it. That's how it's going to be. And then we get probably my favorite moment of any of these two episodes, where it just really showcases the vibes of this show, which is that a lot of this is all artifice, it's all melodramatic for the sake of of a good story and a good time. And it also hints the fact that this Witch's Road isn't quite what it seems. It's a facade. Rio goes up to the background and slices into it to exit. It turns out to be just a painting for the backdrop. The Witch's Road has always seemed like it was on a set. I always thought of that just as an aesthetic choice because the show itself is a bit over the top at times, like a theatrical play. So for the Witch's Road to be like, to choose the aesthetic of being a stage just made sense to me. But then, of course, now we know that the theory is confirmed that this in fact is a creation of Billy's imagination, you might say. This Witch's Road was created by Billy. It's not really the fabled Witch's Road, which Agatha, made up all those years ago. And so, of course, Billy's Witch's Road is going to be theatrical. It's going to be on a stage. And Death, a cosmic being that can traverse through time and space, is able to see through the facade and is able to literally tear through it with her knife and literally breaking the fabric of reality. It's a really cool meta display that references both the in-world show, but also the fact that this is literally a TV show we're watching. It is like a low-budget way of showcasing someone exiting a reality, but again, it fits with the theme of the show. It fits with the aesthetic of the show. You don't always need like spectacular special effects to get the point across. In WandaVision, this would have been more of a CG situation, right? Where she would rip through a translucent barrier that, looks kind of like a TV screen or something, right? It's a good way to use a budget in a creative way. And this was, I think, one of the cheaper Marvel shows, as opposed to maybe some like Secret Invasion, which was over budget, like 200 million or something more, like a lot of money. And that was a much lesser show, even with all that money pumped into it. Anyways, so the group reunites again, and Agatha is eager to get a move on and get to the end. It's kind of also referencing how these shows typically tend to end. These Marvel properties, big spectacle, big colorful beams in the sky. And she bumps into the shoes, realizing that we've gone full circle. We're back at the beginning. She takes out her anger on Billy because, see, at this point, she does know that this is Billy's creation, but she is not really revealing the fact that she knows to Billy. She wants a reward, right? And so if she keeps playing along, maybe Billy can offer her power back. I think that's why she also wants to maintain the fiction of the road. And so he puts his feet in the shoes out of disrespect to the road, and they transport into this X-Men looking place. It reminded me of like the X-Men underground rooms in the mansion from Xavier's school or whatever. It's more of a morgue, and I guess it connects a little bit back to the opening episode of the detective crime procedural show. And so this turns out to be the final trial, and it looks like they're in the basement of Agatha's house / Boner's house. They're physically in the basement right now, but then around them, Billy's hex is make it seem like it's like they're trapped in this chrome morgue. I don't know if this trial is really specific to anybody, and again, because the Witch's Road, including this trial, is part of Billy's creation, it doesn't really all have to make exact sense, right? I guess we could say the same thing about the aspect ratios. Like, it's kind of like plays loose with any of the specific rules here. It's like this is just part of Billy's creation. But the big reveal here is that like Jen here is wishing she had her powers back. She's bound, and she tells them how she was bound back in Boston. And Agatha's like, oh, I didn't realize you've gone through Boston at that time period. And Jen realizes, oh shit, you're the one who bound me. Of course, Agatha forgot about that, didn't think it was a big deal. She was, at some point down in her luck and needed some money. The doctors that invited Jen to Boston for that meeting, it was a trap for her, and it was actually, they wanted to bind her, so they hired Agatha to bind Jen. Now, apparently Agatha didn't know who she was binding. She just did it for the money. Patriarchy really shelled out to shush a lady. This is just representative of patriarchy as a whole, using their power, whether it's money or their privilege, to shut up women who are calling them out for whatever atrocities they've committed, such as harassment. It was bind or burn. So when I first heard this, I thought she was saying that she was either had to bind Jen or she would get burned. I think more, now that I look back at this, I think it's more that she had to choose whether to bind this witch or to burn her, or let them burn the witch maybe. And she chose to bind her. She thought that was the better option. So maybe it is just purely financial motivation at that point. Maybe it had nothing to do with her being threatened. Let's remind the audience a little bit that she is an evil witch. She's killed people. She does things for profit. She's a type of woman who sells out to the patriarchy and damns other women for her own benefit. She's also a tool of the patriarchy, or at least is apathetic to the patriarchy. It just adds more to her character of Agatha being this selfish witch who's like really an anti-feminist type of witch character. So Jen gets obviously angry and decides to do an unbinding ritual. This is a new little ritual I don't think we've seen before, but it makes sense. Rip some hair out of Agatha and use it to bind her wrist and recite this over and over. You hold nothing, you hold nothing. And it works. The power to unbind was within Jen. She just had to find the person who bound her. She's free. She's able to have her powers back, and it's pink power. Pink glowy power. And it's cute. I like it. It really differentiates her from any of the other witchy characters. And I'm excited to see what her character is going to get up to in the future here. And with that emotional release, she vanishes, because she's completed the trial. She found and received and got what she was missing. And I guess that was enough to satisfy Billy's unconscious rule set. And I do kind of wish she was giving a little bit more at the end to conclude this story. Give her some moment, maybe in the fight with death at the end, she could have been useful. It does feel a little bit like, oh, this is just an origin story for this character that will really get a satisfying conclusion later on. It's a bit of a tease, but it's something that Marvel has done throughout, so it's not totally surprising. It's also not entirely bad. Like, I don't mind so much because I think she did have a full arc in the show, because she is no longer bound and she learned to work with others. Now Agatha's like, well, we could end this right now. All you need to do is give me your power, because that's what I'm missing, and we can get out of here. Or I can get out of here, at least. And then Billy's like, well, what about money? So then Agatha's like, okay, fine. I think Agatha realizes that she has to help Billy find Tommy, because at this point she knows that this is Billy's witch's road. This is his hex, his made-up world. If she helps him get Billy back, then that would probably end the trial, right? Because it's his, and she'll be able to get away that way. But maybe she still feels like, if she helps Billy could give her some power at the end. So she sits Billy down. It's like, well, let's get you to revive Tommy. Basically, I think what's happening here is that Tommy is like within Billy's memory, according to Real at this point as well. Tommy isn't living in some other person's body like Billy is. I think Billy, because he has these magical witch powers, he was able to find a host and transport there almost unconsciously, right? While Tommy doesn't have that ability. And so I think Tommy, in fact, disappeared when the hex disappeared, but he still resides within the memory of Billy. So Billy will be able to resurrect him through his memory, through his mind. And so Agatha's going through this like guided meditation here to, also kind of almost like a hypnosis session, some kind of therapy here, witchy therapy, to get Billy to conjure up Tommy and release him from his memory into this real world. And he finds a host, because there's a billion people that are dying all the time, right? And we see images of this kid drowning, some kids pulling a prank on him, a kid that doesn't have a family, he says. So could this be an orphanage? So he's able to do it. He's able to revive Tommy into that body. And he asks this interesting question. He's like, is he killing this boy so his brother can live? So that's a really big deal for Billy. I think for most people, it might come as a surprise to Agatha, but a lot of people don't really want to kill people. And before she could answer, Billy disappears because he found what he was missing. He achieved his goal. He resurrected Tommy. He doesn't know where Tommy is, but Tommy has been resurrected somewhere unconsciously. Like, he transports out of the hex, I guess, leaving Agatha behind for her to finally give the answer, like, no, he's not killing somebody. It just so happens that sometimes boys just die. And she looks at her locket with the hair in it, confirmed to be Nikki's hair for sure. We'll see a little later. When she says that boys just die sometimes, she's also thinking about her son, and so here she's thinking, okay, at this point that Billy's gone, how is Agatha meant to get what she's missing? How does she get through this trial? Now, what Jen and Billy achieved, was that part of the trial or part of the road? Because if you can get what you're missing on the road, according to the rule set in Billy's mind, do you have to even go to the trials? Was this trial just the final moment where you have to get what you're missing? Or is this trial specifically about something else, like about creating life or something, because they spawned in as dead bodies? Maybe this is the Green Witch trial, right? The trial of the Green Witch. I guess that's the one that's left, right? Jen and Billy bypass the trial by just skipping to the end by achieving their main goal, which was getting what they're missing. Maybe Agatha is getting what she's missing by producing life, because she plants this little dandelion seed into this earth here, this crack that was created by Billy. When he resurrected Tommy, it's like it cracked the floor because he was so powerful. But she found this dandelion in the locket, and so she figures maybe that's what I got to do for this trial. So she plants this seed just in the nick of time to grow a little dandelion. The lights turn back on, but everything starts to crumble, and she feels like she accomplished it by creating life. But no. So who exactly is she screaming to here? If she knows that Billy's a creator, she's screaming to Billy. She's like, Billy, get me out of here. I played along with your game, give me the prize. My understanding is that the Witch's Road was crumbling because Billy was done with it in a way. Like, he exited, and so he no longer really had to be conjuring it, although it seemed like at the end it was still pretty present. We'll get to that later. He almost kind of lost interest at that point. Right now he's conjuring up his new superhero costume, and so he's distracted, so he can't maybe maintain that room she's in. That's why it crumbles. And at this point, the Witch's Road doesn't have much of a purpose for him anymore. But that leaves Agatha out in the cold, in the embrace of death. We got Death back, Rio on top of the house, looking very much like the Wicked Witch of the West, with that great cackling. Some of the best witch cackling to ever be heard.
Congratulations, my love! I'm sorry I didn't have a ribbon for you to run through.
A really great delivery there. Perfect death we have here with Aubrey Plaza. But anyway, she's mad, and Rio's like, well, you didn't offer up Billy. Agatha kind of makes it seem like she did her job there by getting, I guess, Billy off the road. But of course, the deal was that for him to surrender to her. Some of this writing here, I think, is a little bit clumsy. It is not as put together here in the finale of this big sequence as I think it could have been. She says, I got you the kid out as agreed, but they didn't agree to that. So it just feels like there was some misunderstanding that wasn't clear, but seemed pretty clear to me. So at this point, Rio's like, well, if you can't offer me Billy, then I'll just take you. And so Rio's kind of playing around with her for right now, And I feel like she's also Rio has built up this resentment over time towards Agatha because they broke up, but also because I think Rio still doesn't quite grasp why Agatha hates her so much. She feels that she took her son because that was part of her cosmic job as death, and Agatha shouldn't be so mad about it. She doesn't quite understand the emotional attachment Agatha had with her son. As cosmic death, she doesn't see him as death as a bad thing. She doesn't quite see the cruelty in giving a mother a few years with her son till they take it away. So so she's kind of releasing some resentment here by slicing her up and making this death, I guess, painful for Agatha. Again, this is also a little bit unclear from an earlier episode. Basically, they were saying how they can't kill each other. If Agatha, she can't kill death because death is death. You can't kill death. But why couldn't Rio kill Agatha? Because at first she had the dark hole to protect her. It's a bit muddy. Death really can't kill people, but she's there to take them when they're already dead. But she's expecting Agatha to deliver herself because she didn't follow through with the deal. And Agatha has been cheating death, for centuries because of her powers. She's stealing her powers from witches, and I think that also prolongs her life. So I think that's what has kept death around, within the vicinity of Agatha for so long, and she's just wants to finally, at long last, take Agatha. I guess Rio tries to lead to Agatha's death by maybe using objects like glass and the wind and all that, and throwing a sink at her, I think. When Lilia tells Agatha at the end of last episode, like she says, like when Rio calls her a coward, to hit the deck, right? Basically to duck. And that's what happens here. I mean, she tries to do a spell, but it doesn't work because it's just the magic needed to defeat death is probably impossible to have. Of course, she doesn't believe she's evil because, you know, she's a natural order of things. I like this characterization of death, you know, that they aren't inherently evil, you know, as death is. It's just a natural thing. And it's, I think, Plaza does play this character really well. You know, she has this creepy vibe to her, but also there's sympathy for her. Like we can feel sympathy even more so, I think, towards Rio than Agatha, because Agatha chooses to kill these witches, but Rio, it's like part of her just state of being. Like she's freaking death incarnate, you know. Her actions aren't based on any sort of morality. It's just based on the fact of the cycle of life, you know, growth, decay, and death. So, you know, so I think she calls her a coward because she's too cowardly to face death. She's prolonged her life. And as we see later on, she's also afraid to face her son. She feels like she was complicit in his short life, exploiting him as a kid, making this deal where he could live long enough for her to have that memory of him, really. And I think that's really what that line's about. At the end of her rope here, as Agatha is about to meet her end, we get the superhero entrance. Wiccan lands in his comic book accurate costume to save the day. Now, this is probably my least favorite part of this episode and of the series, really. I mean, I think this whole sequence is a little weak compared to the rest of the show, but particularly what I don't like is the costume. I feel like the costume here just does not mesh well with the rest of the show and its art design. Yeah, like I understand that they want to make it consistent, his costume, so people can identify him in the future movie. They're like, oh yeah, that's Wiccan. He was in Agatha all along. And they want to synergize it, you know, with the toys they're going to make, etc., etc. But artistically, you know, narratively, I think it just doesn't fit with the show, the look. I think it would have made more sense for it to be a little darker, like more, you know, more similar to his emo goth look he has as the teen. Maybe give it a little bit more flair, you know, something that is more balanced between like good and bad. This just looks like the standard superhero costume you see in the comic book you would see in a more standard comic book movie. That I think this show is trying to stand itself apart a little bit more. The show is trying to do something a little different, and you know, and just compare it to the costuming that, you know, Rio has, you know, her outfits, or even Agatha. It just fails in comparison, you know. It just looks too cheesy. It just doesn't work, and it kind of just brings down the scene a little bit, especially because this is just turns out to be a typical light show moment that we've seen a lot in these Marvel shows. Luckily, the light show isn't the centerpiece. This isn't the final episode. There's still more to see, you know. It does feel a little bit flimsy, a little bit like, oh, let's shove in some typical Marvelisms to make sure that people understand, hey, this is a Marvel show, capital M Marvel show. And then, you know, so Billy here comes in for the rescue. As Agatha points out, he's like the only person that sees good in her. And so, you know, he sacrifices a little bit of his power so she can get hers. Luckily, she doesn't take it all. It looked like he was like gonna get shriveled up like an old corpse for a second, but his face recovers. It's very cathartic for her, I guess, to unleash this purple magic, even though she knows it's not really gonna do much at the end of the day. You know, as she says, it's futile. You know, they can't defeat death. One of them has to sacrifice himself. And so Billy's like, well, I'll do it. I guess, you know, it's me. Even though Agatha is like, hey, I probably should be the one. I guess you could read this in different ways, and where Agatha the whole time planned to sacrifice herself. But I feel like how this plays out, I feel like she's been wavering, but at the last moment, you know, she's fully intending to escape with her powers now and let the teen sacrifice himself. But the teen slash Billy slash Wiccan, he feels like Agatha is a better person underneath. He feels like he can fix Agatha. Billy uses his telepathic powers to communicate with Agatha. And see, usually Agatha, she has a lot of her powers now, right? So she would typically block out any voices. But this, I guess, kind of indicates that she's becoming open to the idea of letting people in. She's softened a little bit more, particularly with Billy, allowing Billy to communicate with her. Billy's like, well, this is how Nikki died, huh? You traded him. And so now Agatha has to face the fact that she is kind of doing what she did to her own son by exploiting her own son for her own gains, right? And then not being able to save him at the end. She can do something different now, you know, with this surrogate for her son in a way. And, you know, so that really strikes a chord in her. It is kind of weird that even at this point, Billy still has some love for Agatha, some faith and some sympathy for her, to the point where he wants to sacrifice himself for her. I feel like they could have followed through with that arc a little better. I don't know. It felt like it does feel a little bit rushed here. This whole little sequence here. Agatha's like just realizing that she can at least save Billy, you know, even though she couldn't save her own son. You know, so she goes back to Rio and we get a passionate kiss between Rio and Agatha. The one we almost had in that one episode, right? Maybe they can't kiss. Is that a thing where, like, if they kiss, Agatha dies because she inadvertently sucks the power? Is this like a rogue situation from X-Men? But actually, I think it's more that, like, kissing is just a way for Agatha maybe to absorb powers. Agatha is classified as a succubus type of witch. You know, in folklore, succubi are like demons that suck the life force out of people, typically seducing people for their life force. It would make sense for Agatha to be able to take the power or the life force out of someone via kissing, not just through getting blasted by some magic. It is nice to get a little bit of closure with the romance arc between Rio and Agatha here. But yeah, so I think like she's intentionally doing this to sacrifice herself, right? I think they could have kissed without her sucking the magic. You know, I think that's also a possibility. She's intentionally offering herself to death by sucking her power, because sucking her power is sucking death, therefore she becomes dead, you know. And later on she says it's a calculated risk. She didn't really intentionally do it for Billy, apparently, but I think that's just a bit of a lie, right? She wanted to save Billy, even though she won't admit it. And that should be, I guess, the conclusion to the toxic relationship between Death and Agatha, as Agatha rots away real quickly. Of course, she's been alive for centuries, cheating Death by stealing the life force of other witches. So it's long overdue. That's why she quickly turns into a corpse here. And this is some cool effect here. I do like the flowers and mushrooms growing on her corpse like this. It makes Death into something kind of beautiful, you know? And so the sun comes up and Death lets Billy go. At least Death got Agatha, which he's been chasing for centuries. I do like this look. I think it's really cool to have the lower part of her face like a skull there. You know, it's like high femme goth Death. As for Billy's look, not doing it. I mean, just look how silly this looks. This looks almost like a CW show now. They really dropped the ball here on this costume. Okay, maybe, am I being too harsh on it? I don't think so. Luckily, he changes into his civilian clothing. He's back in his room, and here's where we get the realization that, yeah, this all looks familiar. What's going on here? He's the one who created the Witch's Road. So we get flashbacks to the moment where Agatha is making the connections here. You know, we got a bunch of references. We got the Ouija, we got the Wizard of Oz. You know, we got cool stuff. There was like a Buffy poster. Jennifer's body poster, Trans Lives Matter, a lot of cool stuff in this room that all relate to the Witch's Road. It was Billy all along that created the road. That theory has been brewing for a bit, so it's not a complete surprise. I think it's well told and well structured here for the reveal. Then we get a little boo from someone in the background for a little cliffhanger for the next episode. Episode 9, Maiden Mother Crone, the last episode of Agatha all along. Yeah, so it's 1750, so that puts it several years after the Salem witch trials. So this is after she killed her coven in that flashback we saw in WandaVision. At this point, she's already met Death and has had a relationship with her. It seems that she's no longer in a relationship with Death. We're in the middle of things here. Basically, she's running in the woods, pregnant, maybe running away from somebody, or she's just trying to find a good spot to give birth, I guess. Maybe she's running to this tree. But this is a cool scene. It's nice to see like how women dealt with childbirth in older times, like in the 1700s, for example. A lemon is a good thing to have on hand when life gives you a lemon. This is pretty much as far as back as we go with the flashbacks. I think we all wanted to see like Agatha met Rio for the first time. We wanted to see a little bit of that romance develop. A nice little meet cute or something, like during, after a slaughtering of witches or something. But no, they started off here because I think their main focus was more about telling the story of what happened with Agatha's son, and really what has informed her evil witchiness most, throughout the show is starts off around here. I mean, she's been an evil witch for a bit, but she goes all out with the Witch's Road situation coming up. She sees Death, she sees Rio, she says, "My love," she says. This is at a point where they're kind of separated. It's not quite the moment where they've severed ties, because this will do it when she's about to take her newborn child. It was meant for this to be a stillbirth, but because Death and Agatha have had a history together, Death offers her a little bit more time. She can't completely keep Death away from her son, but she can give her some time. But she's pleading, she's pleading for this. Agatha is also partly complicit. She could have accepted Death as a natural order of things. Maybe she would have been better off. I don't know. It's hard to say. It's like, would you choose to have 6 years with your son or none at all? It's one of those tough choices. Like, you also got to think about the kid. Like, would the kid want to live for 6 years or 0 years? Oh boy. It's one of those philosophical questions, and that's why this relationship between Death and Agatha is so rich, I think. And they could even lean more into it. They could have showed us more of it. I think it would have enriched it even further. There's so much potential with these two, I think. Like, one of the best relationships of any characters in the MCU. Some great stuff here. So anyway, so Death vanishes. Nicholas is born. She does mention that she used no incantations, no magic. She created Nicholas from scratch. I guess that's to mean she made Billy the natural way. I mean, does that mean there's a father that we don't know about? How did that come about? That's an interesting backstory to delve into one day, maybe, hopefully. I don't know, like, a natural birth is from scratch without magic, from the elemental elements of a sperm and an ovum, I guess. Is that considered from scratch? What if, like, it's like more like she didn't do a spell or incantation, she didn't speak it out into the world, but she thought it, like a type of immaculate conception made by herself? Could that be a thing? Like, I thought that would be an interesting way to bring her son into this world. And from scratch, it almost feels like she didn't need anybody to make it. It also kind of indicates that she did it on her own. which would be kind of cool to have a character that can do that, that has done that, which would make her similar to Wanda, you know, but through maybe more rustic ways before chaos magic. I don't know. I find that would be interesting. I think maybe you can still interpret it that way, and also it kind of reference or relate to the idea of maybe a Antichrist / Jesus figure, you know. And I've just watched like a bunch of Antichrist movies. I watched The First Omen. The First Omen, by the way, is really good. If you want to watch some Antichrist stuff, that's the movie to watch. I would have liked the idea of maybe like Agatha and Rio creating this child from scratch, you know. With their powers, they can do it, you know. They don't need no man. That'd be kind of cool, but they didn't go into details. They didn't, you know, they kind of maybe left it a little bit ambiguous so they can kind of fill in the blanks later in some later show. And I do hope they do. I do want to see more of that. But yeah, anyways, but this is some good shots. This is the kind of shots you would see like in a non-Marvel movie. Like there's a lot of close-ups in the Marvel stuff, and it feels like it's shot in like in the volume, right? So it's like small sets. We don't see that many like zoom out wide shots like this, and so I really appreciate that they did it for this episode here. You know, this whole like sequence here of Agatha and her son, like it's the most cinema out of all the sequences of this season, and it really feels like this could have been part of a theatrical film or something, you know. So she encounters more witches. These are women who maybe have been abandoned by their families. You know, they found each other and made their own family this way, right, in the woods. Agatha takes advantage of them by, you know, again, using her son as a way to get herself into the witch's circle enough to suck up that magic. She comes out of that well fed along with her son. 6 years later, little Nikki is stealing for her mother, maybe to get some knickknacks here and there and maybe some food, but also to lure witches into this little cottage so she can suck their magic and kill them. While Nikki's talking to his pet goat. It's like the family goat, so they can have some goat milk, I'm assuming. But also like a reference to Nikki speaking to the devil, because the devil is often represented as a goat, and Nicholas Scratch, by the way, is another name for the devil. So this is the point where little Nikki is like, do we have to kill witches? Can't we just survive with them? You know, the dialogue here is a little bit simple, maybe on the nose. You know, a little kid doesn't want to do the bad things, and the mom's like, well, we just gotta survive. That's how we survive, by by killing other witches. Basically, you know, a metaphor for libertarian capitalism, pretty much, right? To get ahead, you gotta look out for yourself and only yourself and your family, I guess, and whoever is in the way doesn't matter, you know. Individualistic folk who don't realize that, like, you know, maybe you wouldn't have been able to get to your home if it wasn't for that public road, you know, that is maintained by public services and stuff. I don't know. It's like you could extrapolate what Agatha represents, you know, from this. And so here's a moment where the Witch's Road song comes up. Now, a lot of people are saying that Agatha and her son, maybe, I guess mainly little Nikki here, was the first to come up with this witch's ballad. And that's definitely interpretation. I think that is maybe what the show is getting at. And that's what I thought was going on here at first. You can also see this as maybe that song has been passed around through the generations. And so witches like Agatha have been singing it. And so she has sung it here and there, enough to where her son has picked up on it. And so here he's trying to sing that witch's song that he heard his mother sing, who she's heard it from other people, but he doesn't quite get the lyrics right. Walk the road, the windy, windy road. She kind of corrects him a bit, right? She's like, oh, are you walking this road alone? Actually, you're walking it with me. We walk the windy road, you know, we walk the witch's road. And so this is a moment where maybe she's solidified the fact that, like, it's a coven of two now. Like, the witch's road maybe it's at most for two, her and her son. That's how she wanted it to be. That's how she sang it to her kid, realizing that during this time period, it was just them two walking the roads. And so, in fact, it was a covenant too. I kind of prefer to think that she didn't create the song. I feel like I said, like she had sung it before and they're just kind of like improvising and adjusting the lyrics as they go along to fit their version. And people have their own versions, depending on your culture, and different things. Like these stories are passed along in that way. And so I think that gives more thematic weight to the Witch's Road instead of it being based on an individual who came up with it. This Witch's Road song is more of a collaborative effort throughout the ages, throughout the centuries. I mean, that's how I like to see it. So here she explains a little bit about her power. She can use her purple power to blast things and move objects, but she can't use it to heal her son or divine when death is a-coming. Then we get a nice little montage of her teaching her son magic and them like developing the witch's ballad, their version of the witch's ballad, to the point where they're actually gonna perform it. Then we get a witch here who's curious. She wants more info on who taught him that song, because she wants to know how to get to the road, and maybe the person who taught him that song could get her there. But now Nicky doesn't want to do this anymore, and he runs out, scaring Agatha. And so there's a little tense moment here, because all of us are like thinking, oh shit, is this the moment? Is this the moment where Nicky's gonna die? He's gonna be like lost in the woods, getting eaten by a bear or something? But no, and he's just back at the creek. They're at the creek. This is the creek, probably the same creek, the same creek where we saw in the first episode where they found that dead body. I don't know. Little Nicky, though, is like, you know what? We'll kill witches tomorrow, Mommy. I'm tired. Let's not do that today. Little Nicky has a good heart on him. And evil Mama is corrupting her child. So she probably thinks like, no, like, that's just how it is. I gotta kill her to survive. She's at least content that her kid is safe and sound for the time being. But now in the nighttime, in the midst of sleep, little Nicky is escorted out into the woods, out of his body, and into the afterlife. Really effective scene here. You get what's going on immediately. We know that's obviously death. That's Aubrey. That's Rio, who actually has some sympathies for Agatha, of course. She tells him to, say goodbye. Give his mom a little bit of kiss goodbye. Out of all the deaths that Rio could have given this boy, this is probably the best case scenario, right? Better to die in your sleep than be awake, right? I don't know. I guess some people want to see their last moment, want to have a chance to say something. I don't know. For Nicky, it's the best he could hope for. He's living on borrowed time. This is just the most devastating moment. But I think the moment that I actually got teary-eyed mostly was the montage scene. I think the montage scene of them of Agatha teaching her son and them developing the song, that's what got me most teary-eyed, because I just knew, at this point you just know oh, this isn't gonna last, so this is very, very somber, sad moment here, but also joyful, right? Because it's these are the best times we're gonna have together. She got that time at the cost of now having these memories, and so she buries him. And here's where the Witch's Road song now has even more meaning, has different meaning. It's a burial hymn, connecting this moment with the song, with the ballad, with her grief and sorrow, to how she's gonna make use of that sadness and grief to empower herself. A tragic, evil origin story, I guess. We do get the confirmation here that locket of hair was from her son there. So she puts it in there just as somebody comes by, another witch passing by, hears her singing about the Witch's Road. And she wants on it. She wants on the Witch's Road. Where did she hear about this road? If in fact Agatha and Nikki were the originators of this ballad, for it to have spread so quickly to where this woman here has heard about it only from them, it just feels a little bit contrived, right? To me, it makes more sense that that ballad has been passed on and has been around for ages. This witch coming by has heard it elsewhere, and she's always been on the lookout for someone who might help her get there. And she happens to walk by and hear Agatha sing it, hoping that she might have some insight. Agatha's conniving self immediately is like, I could take advantage of this. Her survival instincts kick in, and she's like, well, I gotta take advantage of this gullible witch here. Use this eagerness of witches to find great prizes and power to her advantage by assembling a coven. And this is where it starts. This is where her Witches Road con begins, and we hear the Witches Road again. At this point, the song is becoming a little bit repetitive at this point. It's like we've heard it so many times now. It's all culminating to this sequence here for the reveal that there has never been a Witches Road. She's been using the folktale of the Witches Road to lure in unsuspecting witches to summon the supposed road, and then when they aren't able to summon it, of course, she blames them, gets them mad, and they all shoot her out of anger, and she absorbs it. That's her con that she's been doing all along. That was Agatha all along, conning witches about the Witches Road. It does feel a little bit jarring, the tonal shift here from this serious, sorrowful, griefful moment to a more campy, witchy cackling here of Agatha killing all these witches. She's like all these looks here are just overly dramatic and campy, almost Halloween costumes. And so it is a bit jarring, but I can excuse it. It's just a fun time to see Agatha in these outfits and being such a great evil witch. You do have to suspend your disbelief a little bit. The fact that she's been able to con so many covens throughout the ages, and they all respond the same exact way. I guess you can say that we're only seeing the successful cons. There could have been plenty other times where she's done the same and they react with anger and they didn't blast her and they just walked away or whatever, or just got upset, which is what we see in the modern times when they don't buy into it. They don't blast her. It's the moment where the road is actually conjured, to Agatha's surprise, because it's never happened before. As Billy comes down the stairs, rushes in, she realizes, yep, this isn't real. He's conjuring this up, just like his mother, and actually breaks the fourth wall a little bit here, looks straight into the camera, which is a nice little touch there. Let me flash forward back to the ending of last episode, where Billy figures it out that, yeah, he's the one who conjured the road, and boo, it's Agatha. It was Agatha all along behind him. She's not a ghost, and she looks fabulous. I do like overall the look. It's a little bit cartoony, the ghost effect. So it feels like it's trying to be a little bit closer to the rest of the MCU, trying to fit in a little bit more. And this is the final episode, so it just has to make that connection. So, these characters can easily flow into the next Marvel property. But I do like this look better than Wiccan's costume, and I think it does fit better within the vibe and aesthetics of the show. And it works also because just Catherine Hahn's performance here as Agatha in these moments, she's having a lot more fun with it, as opposed to Wiccan when he shows up in his costume. He takes it a little bit too seriously. In general, it's just great character development for Agatha. Having her actually die and then come back as a ghost. It's cool that they leaned into the fantasy and the supernatural of it all and committed to it, and it fits so well for her character to end up like that. Billy's feeling guilty for like getting all these witches dead, but Agatha's like, don't give yourself too much credit. She's the one who killed Alice. Lilia sacrificed herself. He also saved a life, He saved Jen's life, so we get a little peek of Jen crawling out through the ground there, and then using her magic to fly on out there. So there we go. That's Jen's exit. She is the high priestess. She's on her way at least to becoming the high priestess if she isn't already. It looks like she's gonna be a major character later on, maybe in her own spin-off, or at least in a future Marvel project. So, basically Agatha's telling him, like, hey, you got to get used to the fact that you're going to kill witches along the way. And, which is a similar thing that she said to her son. But Billy, demonstrating that he isn't like Agatha, says that he'll never get used to it. He has that good heart. He's one of the good witches. Maybe he's a little bit edgy, but he's not going to get used to it. He's not going to brush it aside like it's no big thing, as Agatha does. He's now feeling like Agatha is just being intrusive in his life, right? And doesn't want that evil energy around. And so he wants to banish her. So he's going to do some practical magic to banish her, to which Agatha's like, no, you can't do that. What are you talking about? He thinks he could do it. Like, he released a spell from Agatha to get her back into the real world, to which Agatha's like, that wasn't really you. And then she's like, maybe you loosened the jar. So I think that kind of confirms Billy wasn't really the main person or witch that released Agatha. I think it was mostly Rio. I think, because Rio showed up in her delusional state. And then Billy, as the teen, was there kind of to loosen things up a bit, right? But he's almost successful in the banishing, But then Agatha's like, she wants the locket, the brooch that she's always had, which has the hair of her son in it, right? And she can't quite grab onto it because she's a ghost, and she's still figuring things out, figuring the rules out, kind of like I guess the MCU, the writers in general, they're figuring it out as they go along, which is fine. With these comic book movies, like, there's always these new elements being introduced. Kind of hard to put all these pieces together to make it all make sense. So she's able to finally conjure up the strength to push aside the locket here. And Billy's wondering why she's still here. Why hasn't she gone to the afterlife? Why is she a ghost? Because as we saw before, previous episodes, Lily explained that a ghost stays behind when they still have business to attend to. There's some emotion attaching them to this world. And so that emotion is Agatha's connection with her son. And as she says here, she can't move on because she can't face him. She feels that she's complicit in exploiting her son to perform and to lure these witches so she can kill them, so she can get this power, prolong her life. She has to face that fear and accept, what she did, and maybe find some redemption before she can move on. Maybe before she can face her son in the afterlife, she has to help Billy find Tommy. So she picks up her brooch and it glows. There's some magic to it. It's giving her some power. There's more to her still being a ghost and not being able to move on that we're quite not gonna fully understand until future Marvel projects. Yeah, he basically is like, I'm sure your son will forgive you. He's very sympathetic towards Agatha still, and has that good heart in him, and that's what reminds Agatha of her son. It's when you say things like that you remind me of my son, she says, pretty much. She's actually said it out loud now to him, that he's like a son to her. And they're finally connecting on a deeper level now. Get a little closure to their character arcs here. Even Billy says that a ghost suits her. Indeed, being a ghost does suit her. Another reason why it suits her is because, another thing I forgot to say, is that Agatha is a pretty evil character. I mean, she like is a serial killer, and she laughs as like all these witches are dying. It's pretty funny and campy, though, that scene from earlier, right, when she's absorbing all the magic of these witches. She doesn't have much remorse, right, besides that of Billy or her son. At least she got some comeuppance and she's dead, you know. At least she's, you know, kind of like have your cake in it too. Like, you know, there is some justice, but we can still, you know, have fun and see her, you know, be her evil self as a ghost. Billy is the one with the good heart, so he seals the road, but he leaves a memorial for Sharon, Alice, and Lilia, who will be missed. You know, they were wonderful characters. I think Agatha's smiling here because she's seeing the kind-hearted Nikki and Billy again. You know, it's like, oh, that's nice. That's a nice thing. I wouldn't do that, but it's cute that you're doing it. And we end on what we would expect for a Marvel show, right? Or a Marvel property. One door closes, another opens. They're gonna go find Tommy. Now, there is confirmed to be a Vision Quest show that's part of this supposed trilogy of WandaVision, Agatha Along, and then Vision Quest, which I think is going to focus on White Vision. Probably will focus on finding Tommy. I think I heard also there's going to be another spin-off, so maybe there'd be another one. Maybe that's where Tommy will show up. There could be even a Scarlet Witch movie afterwards. I imagine the conclusion might just be a reunion of the whole family. Like, in the end of WandaVision, we do see that, like, Vision and Wanda say something like they're probably going to say hello once again. So kind of foreshadowing, I guess, that they will reunite, Wanda and Vision, probably as White Vision and the new resurrected Wanda, and maybe Tommy and Billy will be there at that point, and they'll be a happy family again. You know, Agatha can hang around as just a ghostly aunt figure. Yeah, that'd be fun. And of course, you know, maybe Jennifer Kale will show up and be a powerful witch, and maybe they'll start a new coven or something. That was the Agatha All Along finale. I enjoyed the show. I thought it was a great show. I think, again, it's like definitely top tier MCU shows. I think some of the Marvelisms, like the costumes, are trying to tie it back to the greater MCU, kind of bring the show down a little bit. Particularly some of the moments in episode 8 just kind of felt a little bit rushed. The climax in episode 8. Overall, I think Jack Schaefer and the crew did a good job of taking us along this witch's road and playing with all these pop culture witchy aesthetics and themes. And I think what propped it all up was the amazing cast. Even the twist, even if they weren't as surprising, I think they were pretty well executed. It's probably most evident in Lilia's trial episode. I think the writing in there was really well crafted and well done. I think that was a good showcase of how to do a good, you know, time travel story, but also connect all the threads together that the show has been weaving all along, and then giving, you know, a character like Lilia a really good send-off. And then, you know, and then the relationships between, I think, the main trio of Agatha, Rio, and Billy, I think were really well done. I think it all flowed nicely from beginning to end. I love the pastiche, like, homages to different eras, different genres. What was probably missing was more of that backstory between Rio and Agatha. It would have been great to have maybe one more episode of just showing how Rio and Agatha met and see their relationship develop over time. You know, that was teased throughout the whole show, so it's kind of a little bit of a letdown that we didn't get that. And then also, what's the story behind the Darkhold? I feel like that was also something that was being set up. Like, how did Agatha come across and acquire the Darkhold? Maybe they're saving that up for future stuff, you know, another spin-off. You know, there's a bunch of new Marvel stuff coming up. I'm kind of hoping that, you know, they do just like a prequel mini special or something about just Rio and Agatha. I think that would be really cool. Generally, as a whole, again, I enjoyed my time with Agatha Along. It's definitely my vibes. I love witchy magic stuff, and it's just great characters overall. and I'm looking forward to see where they go next. I think this is a really good template for what the MCU can look like, where we have all these different characters and even like genres and aesthetics that can connect to other properties, other characters and stuff, but then they have like their own, like, almost like their own little bubble of their own like mini universe where they can interact with like similar characters. You can have like, this could be like the witchy verse, there could be like the robots stuff, and there can be like space stuff. And I think that's what they were trying to do early on with the MCU, but then they kind of got lost in the multiverse, and everything had to connect to the multiverse. And hopefully Jack Schaefer can continue to do more, but they can give her more stuff to do, and she can, and they let her actually experiment and explore different stuff, because I think she's one of the better showrunners out there right now for the MCU. Hopefully we just get more of the good stuff over the bad stuff. And because again this is still tied to the Marvel universe, so there's like a limit. I think there's like a limit to how good this stuff can be for MCU. They're never going to get too outwardly political about things. They're not going to challenge the status quo too much. They still have to be within the Disney umbrella of things. At least we got some more gay stuff. Like this was, I think, probably the gayest Marvel show. Let's hope we can get gayer. Let's get that Rio and Agatha backstory implemented somewhere. Give Wiccan a cooler outfit. I mean, in this MCU stuff, a lot of heroes, like, they change their outfits all the time, right? So I think they should have saved that one that they showed in this show for another thing, and they should have just given him like a cool dark emo Wiccan outfit for this show. That would make more sense. Anyways, those are my thoughts for Agatha all along. But what do you think? Did you enjoy your time? You got any quibbles, any nitpicks, any major issues? Let me know in the comments. Like Billy, maybe we can conjure our own Witch's Road, Maybe the Witch's Road is what you make it. Maybe we're on one right now. So yeah, I'll see you next time. Under the moonlight. On the Witch's Road. Bye bye.